The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction. Thousands of alien beings sat in floating chairs that moved through the air like birds. Their voices created a noise that sounded like angry bees. Today they were talking about the humans again. Ambassador Zethkar stood at the center of it all. His green scales caught the light from the crystal ceiling above. He was tired of this discussion. For over 300 years, the humans had been asking for the same thing. They wanted to leave their home planet. They wanted to build new cities on other worlds. Every time the Council said no. "The humans are too dangerous," said Council Member Vrix from her position high above. Her blue tentacles waved as she spoke. "They fight too much. They break things. They take what does not belong to them." Zethkar nodded. He had read all the reports about Earth. The humans were always at war with each other. They destroyed their own planet with pollution and waste. They could not even get along with their own kind. How could they be trusted with other worlds? But the human ambassador looked so tired today. Ambassador Jake Morrison stood in the small box reserved for species that were not full members of the Council. His brown hair had turned gray over the years of asking for help. His blue eyes looked sad but still hopeful. "Honored Council members," Jake said in his simple way of speaking, "my people are running out of space. Our world is dying. We have learned from our mistakes. Please give us a chance to prove we can be good neighbors." The Council members made sounds of disagreement. Some clicked their claws. Others buzzed their wings. The fish-like aquarii blew bubbles of annoyance. "You humans destroyed your own planet," said Councillor Brack. His rock-like body moved slowly as he spoke. "Why should we let you destroy others?" Jake looked down at his hands. He had heard this question so many times. "Because we learned. Because we know we made mistakes. Because we want to do better." Zethkar watched the human carefully. There was something different about him today. Usually Jake argued more. Usually he showed them charts and numbers about how humans had changed. Today he just looked defeated. "We are dying," Jake said quietly. "Our oceans are turning to acid. Our air is getting thicker and harder to breathe. Our food is running out. We need help." The hall became quiet. Even the buzzing and clicking stopped. Zethkar felt something strange in his chest. Was it guilt? He pushed the feeling away. "That is not our problem," said Councillor Vrix. "You made your choices." Jake nodded slowly. "Yes, we did. And now we are asking for mercy." The word hung in the air like smoke. Mercy. It was not a concept that came up often in council meetings. Usually they talked about trade routes and mining rights and territorial disputes. But mercy was different. Zethkar looked around the Great Hall. He saw the faces of 1,000 different alien species. Some had been in space for millions of years. Others were newer, like the humans, but they had proven themselves worthy of trust. Only the humans remained locked on their single world. "Perhaps," Zethkar said slowly, "we could consider a small test." The hall exploded with noise. Every being began talking at once. Some were angry, others were curious. Jake looked up with surprise in his eyes. "Silence!" Zethkar roared. His voice echoed through the crystal dome above them. "I am not finished." When quiet returned, he continued. "The humans want to prove they have changed. Let them prove it. Give them one world. One small, difficult world far from our trade routes. Let them show us they can build something without destroying it." "What world?" asked Councillor Brack. His rocky voice sounded doubtful. Zethkar pulled up a star map that appeared in the air above them. Red dots showed important worlds. Blue dots showed developing colonies. Green dots showed empty worlds that might be useful someday. He pointed to a small yellow dot at the edge of the map. "Kepler 442b, he said. "Far from everything. Cold and rocky. Little water. Thin air. If the humans can make a successful colony there, perhaps we can discuss giving them more." Jake stared at the yellow dot. It looked so small and alone at the edge of known space. But it was something. It was hope. How? Many people? Jake asked. 50,000, Zethkar replied. No more, and they must stay on that world until the council decides they have proven themselves. For how long? Until we say otherwise. Jake felt his heart beating fast. 50,000 people on a cold, empty world with no help from anyone. It would be the hardest thing humans had ever tried to do, but it was better than staying on Earth and slowly dying. I need to talk to my government, Jake said. You have one standard galactic month to decide, Zethkar announced. If you refuse, this offer will not come again. The council meeting ended, with the usual ceremony. The floating chairs carried their occupants away like leaves in the wind. Soon only Jake and Zethkar remained in the Great Hall. Why? Jake asked. Why did you offer this? Zethkar's green scales seemed to darken. Because even dangerous animals deserve a chance to prove they can change. Jake wanted to be angry at being called an animal, but he was too tired and too grateful. Thank you, he said instead. As Jake walked back to his small ship, he thought about what he had to do. He had to convince the leaders of Earth to send 50,000 people to a world that might kill them all. He had to find volunteers who were willing to leave everything behind for an uncertain future. He had to prepare them for the hardest challenge in human history. But as he looked up at the stars through the clear dome of the space station, Jake smiled for the first time in years. Somewhere out there was a yellow star with a rocky planet, waiting for them. It would be cold and hard and dangerous, but it would be theirs. The humans were finally going to the stars. On Earth, the news spread quickly. Within days, the government had approved the plan. Within weeks, they had more volunteers than they could take. Everyone wanted to be part of humanity's first step into the galaxy. Lisa Carter, a city planner from New York, was chosen to lead the colony's construction. She had built cities in deserts and on mountaintops. She had never built one on an alien world, but she was ready to try. Dr. Sam Rodriguez, a scientist from California, would lead the research teams. He had studied rocks and soil and water all his life. Now he would study them on another planet. Captain Danny Wright, a former military engineer, would handle the mining and construction equipment. He had built bridges and roads in the worst conditions on Earth. He figured an alien world could not be much worse. The ship they chose was called New Horizon. It was the largest vessel humans had ever built, but it still seemed small for carrying 50,000 people and everything they would need to start a new world. As the ship prepared to leave Earth's orbit, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge next to Lisa Carter. They watched their blue and green home planet grow smaller behind them. Think we can do it? Lisa asked. Jake looked ahead at the stars. We have to. The cold wind of Kepler 442b cut through Danny Wright's thick coat like a knife. He stood on a hill overlooking the human settlement of New Hope, watching the sun set behind the mountains. 18 months had passed since the first shuttles landed on this frozen rock. The aliens had expected them to fail by now. Instead, New Hope looked like a small city. Warm lights glowed in windows of over 3,000 buildings. Smoke rose from factories and workshops. The sound of construction echoed across the valley as crews worked through the night. What should have been a struggling camp had become something much more. Danny smiled as he watched a group of children running between the buildings. When they first arrived, there had been no children on Kepler 442b. Now there were over 2,000. The colony was not just surviving, it was growing. The mining crews found something interesting today, said a voice behind him. Danny turned to see Karen Lopez walking up the hill. She was the colony's head of agriculture, and her green coat was covered in dirt from the greenhouses. Her dark hair was tied back and she looked tired but happy. What did they find? Danny asked. Come see for yourself, Karen said with a grin. They walked down into the settlement together. The streets were busy even though it was getting dark. People hurried between buildings carrying tools and supplies. Everyone had work to do, and everyone seemed to enjoy doing it. They passed the central square where families gathered each evening. Tonight, as always, someone was playing music on a guitar while children danced. The sound of laughter mixed with the cold wind. Hard to believe the council thought this place was worthless, Karen said as they walked. Danny nodded. When they first arrived, Kepler 442b had seemed like the worst place in the galaxy. The air was thin and cold, the ground was mostly rock and ice, there were no plants or animals anywhere. The Council had chosen this world because they thought nothing could grow here. They had been wrong. Karen had spent her first year studying the soil and the climate. She discovered that the planet had everything needed for farming. It just needed to be put together in the right way. The ice could be melted for water. The rock could be ground up and mixed with waste to make soil. The thin air could be thickened with gases from underground. Within 6 months, she had built the first greenhouse. Within a year, she had built 50. Now New Hope grew enough food to feed everyone with plenty left over. They reached the mining center at the edge of town. It was a collection of large metal buildings where the miners brought their daily finds. Danny had designed the whole operation himself. Instead of digging deep holes like miners did on Earth, they collected rocks from the surface. Kepler 442b was covered in rocks that had fallen from space over millions of years. Most planets cleaned up this space junk over time, but Kepler 442b was too far from any star to have a strong magnetic field. The rocks just kept piling up on the surface. The Council had seen this as a problem. Danny had seen it as an opportunity. "Look at this," said Sam Rodriguez, meeting them at the entrance to the main building. The colony's lead scientist was holding a small gray rock in his hands. His eyes were bright with excitement. "What is it?" Danny asked. "Something impossible," Sam replied. "This rock came from the asteroid belt near the fourth planet. It contains materials that should not exist together in nature." He led them to his laboratory in the back of the building. The walls were covered with charts and pictures of different rocks and metals. Tables were piled high with samples from all over the planet. "These materials," Sam said, pointing to a chart, "can be used to build engines that travel faster than light. But they have to be perfectly stable at the quantum level. Natural processes cannot create materials this perfect. So where did they come from?" Karen asked. "That is the question," Sam said. "Either we found the luckiest rock in the galaxy, or someone made these materials on purpose." Danny picked up one of the samples. It looked like normal gray metal, but it felt warm in his hands. "How much of this stuff is there?" "Everywhere," Sam said. "The entire planet is covered in it. We have been mining the most valuable materials in the galaxy and using them to build houses and tools." They stared at each other in silence. If Sam was right, then the worthless world the Council had given them was actually worth more than most entire star systems. "We need to be careful about this," Danny said finally. "If the Council finds out, they might decide to take the planet back." "The monitoring stations," Karen said. "They are watching everything we do." The three of them looked out the window at the metal towers on the hills around New Hope. The Council had placed them there to record the colony's progress. Every day they sent reports back to the Council about what the humans were doing. "The stations are automatic," Sam said. "They record everything, but I do not think anyone reads the reports carefully. The Council members are probably too busy to care about our little colony." "Let us hope so," Danny said. Over the next few months, the colony continued to grow. The population had reached 60,000 as more ships arrived from Earth. Lisa Carter had planned for this growth, and new neighborhoods appeared every week. Each one was better designed than the last. The humans had learned to work together in ways they never had on Earth. Everyone had multiple jobs. The teachers also worked in the factories. The doctors also helped with construction. The children learned science and farming and engineering all at the same time. Amy Foster, who had been a small business owner on Earth, now ran the colony's trade operations. She organized the work crews and made sure supplies were distributed fairly. But her real talent was exploring. In her free time, Amy liked to wander through the mountains around New Hope. She looked for new sources of water and minerals. She mapped caves and valleys. She was always finding something interesting. One day, she found something that changed everything. It was a building buried under centuries of ice and rock. The building was made of the same quantum-stable materials that Sam had been studying. But this building was millions of years old. Amy called Sam and Danny to see what she had found. They brought equipment to melt the ice and clear away the rocks. What they found underneath made them forget how to breathe. The building was covered in writing. The symbols were strange and angular, but they seemed familiar somehow. Along the walls were pictures of star maps and spaceships, and in the center of the largest room was a statue. The statue showed a family of 3 people. They were tall and strong, wearing clothes that looked like spacesuits. Their faces were clearly human. "This is impossible," Sam whispered. "Humans have never been to this planet before." But the evidence was right in front of them. Someone who looked exactly like humans had built this place long before Earth ever sent ships to the stars. Amy found more buildings over the next few weeks. All of them were ancient. All of them were clearly built by humans. And all of them contained technology that was far beyond anything Earth had ever created. "We need to tell Lisa about this," Danny said as they stood in the largest building they had found. It was like a library, with walls covered in metal books written in the strange symbols. "Tell her what?" Sam asked. "That humans used to rule the galaxy? That we are not primitive newcomers but the descendants of an ancient civilization? That the Council has been lying to us for centuries?" Amy picked up one of the metal books. As she touched it, symbols appeared in the air above it. The symbols slowly changed into words she could read. "Welcome home," the words said. The 3 humans looked at each other with growing understanding. They had not been given a worthless world as punishment. They had been given their birthright, and they were just beginning to remember who they really were. 3 years had passed since the first humans landed on Kepler 442b. The colony of New Hope now held 200,000 people. Ships arrived from Earth every month, bringing more families who wanted to start new lives among the stars. Captain Rick Stone stood on the bridge of the Liberty, humanity's first warship built outside Earth's solar system. Through the wide windows he could see 12 other ships floating in space around the planet. All of them had been built in the orbital shipyards that Danny Wright had designed. The ships looked different from anything else in the galaxy. They were sleek and fast, with smooth curves that seemed to flow like water. The metal was the quantum-stable material that Sam Rodriguez had discovered all over the planet. When formed into ship hulls, it made the vessels nearly indestructible. "Sir, we are getting a message from the planet," said Lieutenant Tony Davis, who was working at the communications station. "Put it through," Rick said. The face of Dr. Helen Park appeared on the main screen. She was the colony's chief archaeologist, and she had been studying the ancient ruins that Amy Foster had discovered. Her brown eyes were bright with excitement. "Rick, you need to come down here right away," Helen said. "We found the main archive. Everything we need to know is here." Rick felt his heart beat faster. For months, Helen had been translating the ancient writing found in the ruins. She had learned that humans had once lived all over the galaxy, but many questions remained unanswered. "I will be down in an hour," Rick said. The shuttle ride to the planet's surface gave Rick time to think. The monitoring stations placed by the Galactic Council were still sending their daily reports, but Rick wondered if anyone was reading them anymore. The reports would show that humans now had a fleet of warships and a population growing faster than any colony in galactic history. New Hope had changed dramatically since Rick's last visit. The city now stretched across 3 valleys and up the sides of 2 mountains. Tall buildings reached toward the sky, connected by bridges that sparkled in the sunlight. Gardens and parks were everywhere, filled with plants from Earth and new species that Karen Lopez had developed. The people looked different too. 3 years of hard work in the thin air and low gravity had made them stronger and healthier. The children who had been born on Kepler 442b were taller than their parents and seemed to learn faster than anyone expected. Rick found Helen in the main archive building. It was built into the side of a mountain, using both human construction and ancient alien architecture. The walls were covered with metal panels that lit up when touched, showing star maps and technical diagrams. "Look at this," Helen said, leading Rick to a large chamber deep inside the building. The walls here were covered with moving pictures that seemed to be made of light itself. As they watched, the pictures showed the history of the galaxy. Rick saw stars being born and planets forming. He saw the first life appearing in the oceans of 1,000 worlds. And then he saw humans. But these were not humans from Earth. These humans were traveling between stars before Earth even had complex life. They built cities on planets across the galaxy. They traded with alien species that would not exist for millions of years. They were the first great civilization. How is this possible? Rick asked. Keep watching, Helen said. The pictures showed humans spreading across the galaxy, bringing peace and prosperity wherever they went. But then something changed. A great war began. The pictures showed battles between massive fleets of ships. Planets burned. Stars went dark. The other species turned against us, Helen explained. They were afraid of human power and technology. They formed an alliance to stop us. The pictures showed the final battle. Thousands of human ships fought against millions of alien vessels. The humans were outnumbered, but their technology was superior. The battle could have gone either way. But then the pictures showed something that made Rick's heart sink. The human leaders chose to surrender rather than destroy their enemies. They chose mercy over victory. They could have won, Rick said quietly. Yes, Helen replied, but winning would have meant destroying half the galaxy. The human leaders decided that was too high a price to pay. The pictures showed what happened next. The defeated humans were sent to prison planets on the edge of the galaxy. Their ships were destroyed. Their cities were abandoned. Their technology was locked away or forgotten. Earth was one of the prison planets, Helen said. We were never native to that world. We were put there and told to forget who we really were. Rick stared at the moving pictures with growing anger. Humanity had ruled the galaxy through wisdom and strength. They had chosen mercy when they could have chosen destruction, and their reward had been centuries of imprisonment. The Council knows, Rick said. They have always known. Yes, Helen agreed. Every species in the Council is descended from those who betrayed us. They have spent thousands of years making sure we never remembered the truth. The pictures changed to show the present day. Rick saw the Galactic Council chambers where Jake Morrison had begged for permission to leave Earth. He saw Zethkar and the other council members discussing humans like they were dangerous animals. They were not being merciful when they gave us this planet, Rick said. They were trying to contain us. But they made a mistake, Helen said with a smile. They gave us a world that was once the center of human civilization, a world covered in our own technology. A world that would help us remember who we are. Rick turned away from the pictures and walked to the window. Outside, he could see human families walking through the gardens. Children played in the streets while their parents worked in the shops and factories. None of them knew they were the descendants of galactic rulers. What do we do now? Rick asked. We tell everyone the truth, Helen said. And then we make some decisions about the future. That evening, the colony's leaders met in the council chamber that Lisa Carter had built in the center of New Hope. The room was packed with people who had helped build the colony from nothing. They listened in silence as Helen showed them the pictures from the archive. When she finished, the room was quiet for a long time. Finally, Bill Hayes, who had been elected as the colony's first senator, stood up to speak. The question is not, what happened in the past, Bill said. The question is what we do now. Do we stay here and pretend we do not know the truth, or do we return to our rightful place in the galaxy? The Council will not just let us take over, said Amy Foster. They will fight us. Let them try, said Danny Wright. We have the technology of our ancestors and the knowledge we have gained here. We are not the same humans who chose mercy over victory. But are we willing to make different choices? Asked Karen Lopez. Are we willing to do what our ancestors would not do? The room fell silent again. Everyone understood what she was asking. Their ancestors had chosen to surrender rather than destroy their enemies. Would the new generation of humans make the same choice? Rick stood up slowly. As the commander of the human fleet, his voice carried weight in these discussions. We do not have to choose between mercy and victory, he said. We can choose both. We return to the galaxy not as conquerors, but as the rightful leaders we have always been. We show them that humans have learned from both our mistakes and our successes. And if they refuse to accept us? Asked Lisa Carter. Rick smiled, but his eyes were hard as steel. Then we remind them why they were afraid of us in the first place. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would return to the galactic stage. But first, they had to tell the Council what they had discovered. They had to make it clear that the age of human imprisonment was over. Bill Hayes was chosen to carry the message. As the colony's senator, he had the authority to speak for all humans on Kepler 442b. More importantly, he had the courage to walk into the council chambers and announce that everything had changed. The ship that would carry him to the council was called the Constitution. It was the most advanced vessel humans had ever built, incorporating both ancient technology and modern innovations. When the council saw it, they would understand that humanity was no longer asking for permission. They were announcing their return. 6 months after the truth was revealed, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. Where once thousands of alien delegates had floated in their chairs with confidence, now they huddled together in small groups, whispering nervously among themselves. Senator Bill Hayes stood at the center podium where Zethkar had once announced humanity's single colony. But Bill was not asking for permission today. He was announcing what had already happened. Honored council members, Bill said, his voice carrying clearly through the crystal dome above. I come before you today to inform you that humanity has established colonies on 47 worlds across the galaxy. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Delegates clicked their claws and buzzed their wings in outrage. But Bill raised his hand and somehow the noise stopped. There was something different about humans now. Something that commanded respect, even, from their enemies. You gave us one world, Bill continued calmly. You expected us to fail. Instead, we remembered who we are. Ambassador Zethkar, now looking much older than he had 3 years ago, stood up from his seat. His green scales had lost their shine, and his voice shook when he spoke. You cannot simply take worlds that belong to others, Zethkar said. The Council will not allow it. Bill smiled, but his eyes remained serious. The Council has tried to stop us. 3 weeks ago, the Vrex Empire sent their entire fleet to blockade our trade routes. Would you like to tell everyone what happened to that fleet? Zethkar's scales turned pale. The entire chamber knew what had happened. The Vrex fleet of 500 warships had been disabled in less than 10 minutes. Not destroyed, but disabled. Every ship had simply stopped working, floating helplessly in space until human rescue ships arrived to help them. We could have destroyed them, Bill said quietly. Our ancestors would have had that choice 3,000 years ago. But we chose mercy just as our ancestors did. The difference is that now we have the power to make that choice meaningful. Admiral Tony Clark, commanding the human fleet from orbit above the Council station, watched the proceedings through a live video feed. His flagship Constitution floated among 30 other human warships, their sleek hulls gleaming in the starlight. Sir, said his communications officer, the Council is trying to send messages to their homeworlds. Should we block them? No, Tony replied. Let them talk. It will not change anything. Tony was right. Across the galaxy, human colonies were being established faster than anyone could count. The humans were not conquering through force. They were conquering through superiority. Every human colony became a center of prosperity and advancement. They offered better jobs, better education, better healthcare, and better technology than anything the Council species could provide. Alien populations began requesting human governance, drawn by the promise of a better life. Dr. Grace Williams, now serving as Director of Human Galactic Operations, had organized the expansion with remarkable efficiency. She worked from the new capital city of New Hope, which had grown into a metropolis of over 1 million people. The integration process is ahead of schedule, Grace reported to the Colony Council. 15 former Council worlds have voted to join the Human Commonwealth. 20 more are expected to vote next month. The Commonwealth was humanity's new government for their expanding territory. Unlike the old Galactic Council, which was controlled by the most powerful species, the Commonwealth gave equal representation to all members regardless of size or strength. Former enemies became partners. The rock-like Brack species, who had opposed human expansion, now served as construction supervisors on human worlds. Their natural strength and patience made them excellent builders. The fish-like Aquari, who had feared human pollution, now worked with human scientists to clean up damaged oceans across the galaxy. Even some Vrex, despite their recent military defeat, had requested to join human colonies. They found that humans valued their tactical skills and strategic thinking. Back in the council chamber, Bill Hayes continued his speech. We do not seek revenge for the centuries of imprisonment. We do not seek punishment for the lies you told us about our own history. We seek only what we have always sought: peace, prosperity, and justice for all. Councilmember Vrix, her blue tentacles trembling with age and fear, spoke up from her floating chair. What do you want from us? Nothing, Bill replied. You are free to continue governing your own worlds as you see fit, but you will no longer govern ours. The simple statement hit the council like a physical blow. For thousands of years, they had controlled the galaxy through a combination of political manipulation and military threat. Now they were being told that their authority over humanity was finished. And if we refuse to accept this? Asked Councillor Brack. Though his rock-like voice lacked its former confidence, Bill turned to look directly at him. Then you will find out why your ancestors were so afraid of us. The threat was delivered without anger or hatred. It was simply a statement of fact. If the council chose to fight, they would lose. If they chose to cooperate, they would benefit. The choice was theirs. President Matt Davis, elected as humanity's first galactic leader, arrived at the council station that afternoon. His ship, the New Dawn, was even more impressive than the Constitution. It incorporated technology that made it appear to be made of pure light. Matt was younger than most galactic leaders, only 45 years old, but he carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew he represented the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. I have come to offer partnership, Matt announced to the assembled council. The human commonwealth is prepared to work with any species that chooses cooperation over conflict. Over the following weeks, the transformation became complete. One by one, council species began requesting membership in the human commonwealth. They saw that resistance was futile and cooperation was profitable. The Vrex Empire, once humanity's greatest opponent, became one of their strongest allies. Zethkar himself requested a position in the new government, hoping to use his experience to help smooth the transition. You were right to fear us, Matt told Zethkar during a private meeting. But you were wrong about why. You feared we would destroy you. Instead, we have made you stronger. It was true. Under human leadership, the galaxy experienced an era of advancement unlike anything in recorded history. New technologies appeared every month. Trade routes expanded. Conflicts between species decreased. Prosperity increased for everyone. The former council members, now junior partners in the human commonwealth, often marveled at how completely their positions had reversed. They had tried to contain humanity by giving them one difficult world. Instead, they had given humanity exactly what they needed to reclaim their birthright. Zethkar, now serving as an advisor in the Department of Interspecies Relations, often thought about that decision. He had stood in the council chamber 3 years ago and announced that humans could have one colony to prove they could be civilized. They had proven much more than that. They had proven they were the most civilized species in the galaxy and the most dangerous to underestimate. The monitoring stations on Kepler 442b had been converted into communication relays, connecting the human commonwealth across hundreds of light years. The reports they sent now were not about a struggling colony, but about the center of a new galactic civilization. Jake Morrison, the former human ambassador who had once begged for a single world, now served as the Commonwealth's Secretary of Diplomatic Affairs. He often stood in the same council chamber where he had once been denied, but now he spoke as an equal among equals. The galaxy is finally at peace, Jake said during one Commonwealth assembly. Not because we conquered our enemies, but because we helped them become our friends. The transformation was complete. Humanity had returned to their rightful place as leaders of galactic civilization. But unlike their ancient ancestors, they had learned to balance strength with wisdom, power with mercy. The aliens who had once imprisoned humanity now served alongside them, building a future that was brighter than anything the old council had ever achieved. The galaxy would never again make the mistake of underestimating humanity. But more importantly, humanity would never again forget who they truly were.